I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. During Wednesday's House Oversight Committee hearing about gun manufacturers, Representative Rashida Tlaib denounced firearm companies for using a, quote, halo effect, which refers to promoting their ties to military and law enforcement to boost sales. Tlaib lashed out at gun advocates and the CEOs of gun companies for their, quote, dangerous ads that are breeding domestic extremists and putting communities of color at risk.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bessie, why are Americans afraid?
I think that's a complex question. They're afraid for many reasons. We've had much societal turmoil in the last 5.5, 6 years for sure.
Yeah, well, let's get to this. You know, gun manufacturers have sought to boost their sales by promoting their ties to the military and law enforcement. Smith & Wesson referred to this as, quote, halo effect. In 2016 earnings call with their investors, the CEO at the time said, I quote, it certainly gives your product a lot of credibility if it's used, adopted, and well regarded by that professional community because the consumer does pay attention to that. You know, Ms. Sampson, could you explain what the so-called halo effect, how it is and how deceptive it is?
Yes, thank you for the question. The halo effect is basically when the company, Smith & Wesson in this case, puts itself under the proverbial halo of the military because they are so esteemed in society and basically says, if you want to have the firepower that they have, you should get our weapon. And in the case of Smith & Wesson, it was especially absurd for them to do that because they don't actually supply the military at all.
Yeah. You know, Mr. Daniel, the committee obtained advertisement by your company uses, to sell your weapons, which include images of individuals in fully geared military tactical gear, body armor, and your rifles. Are those as advertisements intended to increase sales to armed forces or law enforcement? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes is the answer.
Oh, yes. No, the answer is no. These weapons are intended to be sold to civilians. So the advertisement inherently wouldn't target anyone other than civilians, just like the killer in Uvalde. Another one of the gun manufacturers this committee has also investigated was Sing Sauer, often employs these tactics as well. And I'd like to put one of their ads on the screen, if I may. Do you all see this? This is an ad for Sing Sauer's MCX assault rifle. It depicts troops in combat zone with modified assault weapons, including one with a grenade launcher. The text of the ad emphasizes the rifle's, quote, modularity, or makes it, quote, ready for every possible mission, in a not so subtle reference to their military style and use. These are not pictures and themes that suggest that the assault rifle was used to be used for hunting or sport shooting. So, Mr. Bussett, how is this kind of imagery and rhetoric dangerous when the primary advertising target is civilians with little, if any, military firearms training?
Well, these are very serious weapons, and it's a very common practice now in the firearms industry. Did not used to be, but it is a very common firearms industry marketing practice now to market to or using special operators or trained military officers or military weaponry, but focus the marketing at consumers because that's where the larger and profitable marketing segment is.
You know, Sing Sauer sold the AR-15 style rifle used by the mass shooter to kill 49 people in Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. In 2016, 3 of those weapons were used by shooter in Las Vegas, Nevada, in 2017 to kill 60 people. The company recently, literally, are selling the version of its new rifle that they have contracted out, their M14 or whatever, for the U.S. Army. They're selling the same configuration that is near match to what American soldiers will be soon be using in battle. We shouldn't be surprised when young men purchase these weapons to be more like soldiers in the picture, and we shouldn't be surprised when they try to act like them either. These dangerous ads must stop. Yet they're breeding domestic extremists and putting communities of color, communities that are incredibly vulnerable, especially like children in our schools and minority groups, at grave risk. And so it's incredibly important that we call this out what it is. They are targeting folks to do what they to basically target the most vulnerable by selling it that way. This imagery is not towards soldiers, to the lay people, civilians. They're advertising it in a way, again, that depicts it to endanger people's lives. And so it's incredibly, again, important that we understand this is intentional. The halo effect is real and is profit-driven, and lives are lost because, again, they don't care who dies. They care how many guns they're selling to people. And the more people they can show that you can be like law enforcement and soldiers that have been trained in military battle, then they're going to be able to, again, expose us to more death and more violence. With that, I yield, Madam Chair.
The gentlelady has yielded.